And we're back for another interior cleaning video on this 2003 Toyota Matrix XRS. Now this was a very friendly budget detail, and by that I mean it was essentially free, so I only spent my time on the seats, floor mats, and removing some of the pet hair in the interior, so I didn't really touch the door panels, dashboard, center console, or headliner. Nonetheless, I'll be walking you through the steps as the video progresses. Now before we get started, as always, if you want to start your business, then download in the description box down below, there'll be a guide to the 9 services that you can offer. That includes the details in each service, the services that you can offer, how long each service takes, and a lot more information about those services and how you can start them off in your business. So if you want to download that guide, check the description box down below to get it. Now let's get into the video. So I'm gonna start off with a pet hair brush just because there's a light layer of pet hair on the floor mat. So I wanted to make sure I remove those loose items. Next, I'm gonna follow that up with a thorough vacuuming. And here I'm actually using a pump sprayer with super clean diluted 10:1 to really saturate the floor mat. This one was pretty heavily soiled, so I wanted to make sure I put enough to where, well, number one, I'm working in the sun and it's not going to dry on me, and number two, obviously, to give it enough product to be able to work it into the surface area and clean all that gunk out. Now the machine polisher I'm using here is a Greats Garage 6-inch polisher with a carpet attachment. And you can see there, I spread more solution into the real dirty area because obviously that's a heavily soiled area, so I wanted to make sure I'm really agitating that area. Next, I'm going to use my Alcovac extractor and just very slowly, and that's why I kept this part of the video slow or normal speed, is you can see how the speed of my hands moving, because this was very soiled, so I wanted to give the extractor enough time to eject that water and vacuum it out at the same time. And obviously you're going to want to spend more time on the areas that need it most. So, mentally you need to make a note of where those stains were so you know where to pay attention. Now I've been using this machine for at least 15 details now, and it is a great machine. I highly recommend it if you've never used an extractor or you're thinking about getting an extractor. This AquaProVac extractor is a great tool to have in your arsenal. As you can see, I'm placing my hand on the mat to keep it steady because once you start pulling on the extractor, it kind of moves the mat a little bit. So I just use my hand there as a placeholder to make sure I keep the mat flat on the surface so I can be able to vacuum it and move the wand around. And lastly, I'm just going to use a towel to buff off any of the residue that I can get out of the floor mat to help it dry faster. And next, I'm just going to mat down the fibers one way. As you can tell, it just gives it a different appearance depending in which way you lay the floor mats down. It's going to be the same process for the floor mat, except there's more pet hair, so there's more brushing involved with the pet hair brush to remove most of those hairs. Next, gonna follow it up with a thorough vacuuming to remove any more pet hair or debris that may be stuck in the fibers. I'm gonna lay down again super clean 10:1 in my pump sprayer to save me from having to pull the trigger so many times. And then I'm gonna agitate with my Greats Garage 6-inch polisher with the carpet brush attachment. Now there wasn't actually that many stains on this floor mat, it was more so of the pet hair, but just to make sure we get the smell out and make sure it is as clean as it can get, we're going to go through the whole process and still extract it with slow hand movement, keep my hand in place so the mat doesn't move, and making sure that we're going to wipe it down to remove as much of the water that we put in the floor mats. And now let's move into the actual interior where the seats are at. Now the sun's kind of in the way, so it's hard to tell, but this was a heavily soiled driver's side seat. This is very typical with cloth seats, especially with a vehicle this old. It's a 2003, so over a decade now at this point, about to be 2 decades really. You're gonna find a bunch of grime, stains, sweat, gunk, whatever the case may be. You'll find all of that in the vehicle this old. Next, we'll move on to the passenger side, and we have some yumminess right there in the seats. And the top portion of the seat wasn't that bad, except of a few stains here and there. Now we're not gonna go for complete. You're never gonna get 100% perfection when you're cleaning these seats. You're just making them look a lot better, because just for the nature of it being so old, it being so worn out, some stains are simply not going to come out. Now here again, I'm using my pump sprayer, which I bought at Home Depot for like I think 12 bucks or something, with my Super Clean diluted 10-to-1, and I'm going to spray quite a bit of APC into the seat just because I want to make sure it's in the material. If you don't spray enough solution onto the fabric, you're not going to really be that effective when you're agitating, because the product, number one, is going to dry up, and two, you're just simply not putting enough solution down to really work it into the fiber. So I'm going to make sure I spray enough solution in there to really agitate with my brush, and then I'm going to follow it up with the extractor. And as you can see, I'm using the wand upside down or upside up, whatever you want to call that, because I want to catch most of the water that's falling out. So you can see there, the water is actually falling down, but when I flip it, as the water is being injected, I'm sucking it back into the vacuum, and I'm not creating as much of a mess by the water falling down the seat. So the reason I'm doing this is to minimize the amount of water that keeps on falling down. And as you see, I'm kind of using my right or left hand to pull the fabric. That way it doesn't create those little bumps or lumps or little humps that the vacuum has to go over. And sometimes cleaning parts of the cloth seat is a little bit tricky just because you don't have that much room from the seat to the roof of the car, so you have to kind of adjust the way you're extracting the seats. And same thing, I'm just gonna saturate the area, agitate, and then vacuum. With the I'm gonna extract. Now remember, with everything in detailing and cleaning, it's all about do the work and then inspect. So clean and inspect, clean and inspect. So I'm not ever going for 80% or 100% on the first pass. I'm gonna do what I can and then inspect my results and see where I need to adjust or touch up again for better results. And that's just another example right there of me holding down the seat. That way it's a flat surface, so the extractor can easily move through the seats, eject the water, and vacuum it up. Now some seats are going to be easier than others, and this one was a bit more difficult just because the fabric of the seat was just so old and worn out and flat. But the other seats that might be a bit more difficult depending on the shape of it, or easier that it might be flatter and just much easier to clean. And lastly, we're going to use a towel to mop up as much of that residue that we can to increase the speed of drying. Now the reason why I'm not using the polisher as I was on the floor mats, why I'm not using them on the car seats, is simply because one, when I'm using the polisher, it bogs down a lot because since the seats aren't completely flat like the floor mats, as soon as there's any type of curved surface or not a flat surface, it's not going to be spinning. And if the carpet attachment, if the polisher isn't spinning, then it's not actually agitating the seats, number one. Number two is when I use that type of carpet brush on this type of seat that I want some very thorough cleaning, it simply does not do an effective job with it. So that's why I go to the hand brush and manually agitate it, because those bristles on that brush that I'm using are somewhat aggressive enough to really clean out that gunk in the seats, as opposed to using that other brush where for cloth seats specifically, just in my opinion doesn't do a good enough job. So for the floor mats it works because it's on a completely flat surface, so the polisher is not gonna bog down by any means. Now when I move that polisher to the seats, it's not as stiff, it's a bit more curvy, it's not as flat. Then it's not gonna be as effective agitating the seats with that polisher. Hence why I'm using that brush. And now let's move to the back side, and this is where the dog is most of the time. So that's why there's going to be a lot more pet hair in this area, because this is where the dog's always running around, as well as where a lot of the junk is just thrown out in the back. As you can see, all the water bottles, the folders there, paper. So this is very typical that you see in interiors, that a certain section of the car is going to be a lot dirtier because they throw stuff there, the dog's there, they use that area as like that's where they put all their trash, whatever the case may be. There's always gonna be like a specific area that's really dirty in the interior. So I just take a normal plastic bag, nothing fancy, and just put certain items. So I had one bag to get the plastic bottles and trash, and another bag to put things that might be theirs that they want to review to see if they want to keep it or throw away, but that's up to the customer, not to me. So I'm going to throw the obvious trash away and keep what might even slightly be something that they want to keep in a separate bag. Next, I know that this sheet here was gonna be is probably like to try to keep the dog hair or their mess kind of contained. So I knew there's gonna be a lot of pet hair in it. As you can see, it's kind of just flying to your face right now. So I was just trying to shake it to try to knock off some of that pet hair and to loosen it from the back so I can pull it out, fold it, and put it in the trunk. Now this is a more thorough look of the condition. Pet hair all alongside the edges. I removed the floor mats, which is why on the left side there wasn't pet hair on the surface on the carpeting because the floor mat was there. On the right side there wasn't no floor mat, so there was pet hair all across that area. And when you're doing pet hair, you want to check literally all the areas. Like, you're gonna see the obvious pet hair that's on the floor, that's on the seat, but you really have to dig in between the seams. Like, you have to pull back the seat to see if there's anything that's any like chunks of hair that's accumulated in the pockets. So just pet hair will literally get everywhere. So you need to check everywhere. Pull down the seats, push forward, push backwards, look under, look above. I mean, you really have to give it a thorough inspection to make sure you're getting most of the pet hair out of the vehicle. Now, with that being said, that doesn't mean you're gonna get 80, 90, or 100% of every pet hair out the vehicle. Some of the hair is just simply not gonna come out. It's just not practical to literally get 100% of the pet hair out. It's just some are gonna be still floating around. Some are gonna be so tiny and so like just so tiny that it's just really intertwined with the carpet that it's not worth the time to go after 100% removal of pet hair. And number two, it's just not practical. So I'm just using the pet hair brush to knock everything down, loosen up the material. I'm not gonna vacuum right now. I'm just loosening as much as the pet hair as I can so I can blow it out with my Metro Sidekick. And there we go. As you can see, I'm going to use my Sidekick, which is just an electrical blower, and I'm going to blow as much of that pet hair as I can. That way, it just makes the cleaning process faster overall. And two, when it comes to vacuuming, it's that much easier and quicker because I blew out as much of the loose pet hair that I possibly could. And this is a great alternative if you don't have an air compressor, which I don't. I use the Metro Sidekick to blow out most of whatever I need in the interior. And then I'm just going to proceed to brush down the other stuck on pet hair that's on the carpeting. And this is why I wear pants most of the time. Here I'm wearing shorts, and the problem with wearing shorts is that, okay, and specifically in Texas, I mean, we sweat unbelievably because it is so hot outside. It's so hot and humid. So when your arms and legs are sweaty, as you can easily tell, when you're working the interior, your legs and arms are going to be touching the seats, leather seats, the cloth seats, the plastic, and if you let that sweat dry there, number one, you might leave another stain, and two, you're just causing more mess for yourself. So if you're wearing pants, you minimize the chance of you spreading sweat all across the interior. So I in the last 100 details, I probably wore shorts maybe 3 times. And as you can tell, the interior already looks a lot better just simply by brushing it down and blowing it out with the air. And this was just the initial results after doing the blowing it out and vacuuming. Now, I didn't record that just because the camera had overheated from being too hot outside, so I have to turn it off for a while. And this is the condition of the seat after I removed all that pet hair. So this is just the pet hair removed, but I actually haven't cleaned the seat yet. But as you can see, it already does look a lot better. Granted, it's still kind of smelled in there. Granted, the condition of the seats are still pretty bad. But simply by removing the pet hair, it really improved a lot. Alright, and that wraps up the entire interior. So now I'm going to just show you some before and afters of the interior. So as you remember, this was the before on the driver's side seat. And this is the exterior. As you can see, there's still quite a few stains here and there, if you can tell. As you can see right there, there's still a little bit of stainage, but again, we got at least 80, 90, 95% of the stains out. It's looking way better than what we started. And again, it was a budget friendly detail. So this is more than enough to make the customer super happy. Now, a lot of times when it comes to the results that you're getting, it really comes down to managing the customer's expectations. You can't detail someone's car if you're doing this as a business and say you're gonna literally remove every single last stain and yada yada yada, because it's simply not gonna be practical. You have to set up the expectations of saying, hey look, not every stain's gonna come out, but it is gonna look 10 times better than its current condition. And that's what we have here. And this is the before on the pet hair. Again, it was completely soiled with pet hair, a bunch of stains on the seats, and it just wasn't pretty. And here is the after. There's still plenty of pet hair in the interior, but it's still a significant increase in appearance, and the smells highly decreased after that thorough cleaning. There's still that stain that you saw there, that crayon mark or whatever that green color was. You'll still see a few here and there. And at this point, the interior was completely clean. So what you see is the actual results that I'm getting. None of those stains were gonna wick back. The seats were already saturated. What you see are the actual results, because everything at this point is 110% dry. And that's one thing you want to keep in mind, is that if you already saturate an area, it's going to look clean, but once it dries, you may see different results. So make sure that when you're inspecting a vehicle, or before you turn in that vehicle, you dry most of the solution or water from the surface, so you can see the actual results that the customer is going to see, and not just it looks cleaner because it's simply wet. And that wraps up this video. I hope you enjoyed. Check the description box for that guide, and I'll see you on the next one.